Hey everybody, this is Larry Little.
And I'm Melissa Jackson.
And you're listening to Crossing the Line, a podcast where we talk about, well, Melissa, just about anything. We talk about relationships, we talk about life, we talk about leadership, and hopefully at the end of it, you come away with a few things that'll help you through life.
That's right. We want to keep it real. It's important to be able just to talk about real life situations, and I think you have one.
I do have a real life situation. We're gonna keep this anonymous, right? Because we would never want to disclose, protect the innocent. So our producer's name is Robin. So that's not who we're talking about. No, we're not talking about Robin. We're talking about Robina, and Robina has two beautiful twin daughters.
Yes.
So she was getting them ready for school. Her husband got them in the car. They took off to school. He was trying to help them with their spelling.
Like a good dad.
Yeah, helping with their spelling bee coming up or whatever they're doing in school, and like a good dad. But they were getting frustrated because they couldn't get the words just right, and the girls were kind of getting frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking to Robina about this afterwards, and Robina made a comment. She said, "Well, we don't want them to be frustrated when they go to school."
That's a good, thoughtful mother. Very thoughtful
good thoughtful mother. And the good dad that he had been doing, he was just, he was just trying to help. And that's what he said. He goes, "Look, I was just trying to help. I got it wrong again," or whatever. What a great example. I can relate to that. Can you?
Oh, take that, multiply it.
Yes. I can, yes. And so today we want to talk about not those big divides that kill relationships instantly. That's not what we want to talk about. We want to talk about the everyday things that happen that we kind of need to reconcile, that we need to self-reconcile, if you will, that we need to look at how we're dealing with it, how we're walking through life, because it's those little things that add up, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the podcast. It's those everyday little currents that come, and then they turn into cracks, and then they turn into split, and it causes relationships to end. So, with that being said, there's some data to support what we're saying, that this is an important thing. I think we have to learn how to reconcile the little things. And, the truth is that about a third, 27-ish%, say that they are, but family members are estranged with one another, that at least one family member is estranged with another.
So think about that for a moment. Let me jump in, because if you're saying 27%, so that impacts your family, my family, everybody's family. We can probably pause and think about how do we experience that even in our own family. So it's a true data point. It's real data.
Yeah, it's real. And if you think about it, they also tell us that about 50% of people place judgments on others based on their political preference. Can you imagine?
Right.
It's so true, though.
You had to bring that in.
I mean, it's just a real deal. And so maybe in the future we'll do a podcast about families and politics.
We've done
one before. We may bring that, and do it again, because I do think it's those kind of everyday things that we need some help with. Data also tells us that if something goes bad, let's say those small cracks, they build up, and there's a true breakup of the family. Man, it takes a long time. It somewhere between 4 and 8 years to build back those relationships with a mom or a dad, let's say, in a family.
It's a long time.
It's a long time, and I think that it's something we might take for granted because we're all so busy. I know I am, and I know I don't slow down to kind of look at what my words do, what my tone does, those kind of things, and we have just those little drive-bys, that damage our relationships.
And we're not aware, that happens on a day-to-day basis, and we have different personalities, we're in different places in our life, and those things happen without us being aware, and they're not intentional necessarily. Everybody is working to do the right thing, be
That's right.
A good person in the relationship. So I think it's important to be mindful. We can give some tips, some things today in order to help us, that we're constantly putting some energy into being aware, so we can determine how that account looks.
Look, what we don't need is more to do. We don't need this long, exhaustive list of, you got to do this and do that. And we're not talking about that. We're not talking about therapy. We're talking about some practical
Let's not get into
things.
therapy. Let's just don't
Although
do
we all
that.
probably need a little, but we're not going there. But what are some practical things? And I think you have to first understand, what is going on inside ourselves. That at first we're busy and all of those things. But I need to talk just a minute about what happens if. What happens if we don't deal with these small things? And there's a guy by the name of Gottman who came up with, he called them the 4 horsemen. We've taken those and worked with them for years, but I think it's worth at least talking about. Just be aware that this could happen, because one of the 4 horsemen is criticizing. And when we find ourselves criticizing those we care about or those in our relationships that we have relationships with, we find ourselves being negative. We find ourselves being critical. It begins to build.
And that, if we take that just on the surface level, we can be critical internally about others. We can be critical externally.
Yep.
Our mouth can get to going and we can say things that are critical. And also, we can maybe sometimes do that we think we're helping others.
Right.
There are different perspectives on that,
Yep.
with different personalities. We think we're telling the truth. We're helping others. We're helping them be aware. But it can come across to the other person as being a little critical.
That's right, especially when they didn't ask for our help.
They didn't
Right?
ask for our help. That's a great point.
But
That could be its own podcast.
They could be, but we're going to fix it. We're going to help.
Yeah.
Another thing to kind of think through, first, am I being critical? Just kind of be aware of that. The next thing, though, is am I being defensive? In other words, when I have someone that I have a relationship with and they try to help me, or they try to say something that I need to change, or that am I defensive, or can I receive that feedback?
And being defensive, there's something going on that's poking. It's kind of poking the bear. There's something that's there that when I respond out of defense, something gets poked. And, I heard a gentleman say recently, I think I've said this before, but that we can be a trigger for someone else without knowing it.
Oh, yeah.
We can poke the bear, we can be poked. And those things can go on without us really being aware of what's going on underneath. So defensiveness can cause us to just kind of check ourselves to see.
That's exactly right.
If we see that in somebody else, can give us an opportunity to be aware of, I've done something there. I need to be mindful. Or if we're responding in that way, hey, what's going on? That's creating that response.
Because that causes us to, and this is a 3rd horseman, to stonewall. And stonewall is, I'm now going to put up a wall. I'm beginning now not to hear you.
Going to kind of write you off a little bit.
Write you off. I'm really going to take steps back. I've been critical. I'm defensive. Now I'm going to just start putting up a wall.
So stonewalling, is that when 2 people in the same house are not talking to each other?
That's exactly what it looks like. I'm going to go my way, you go your way.
Okay.
And we're going to put off having communication. We're not going to do it. It's too painful. We're going to stonewall.
Just frustrated.
Yeah. Just not going to do it. And that, so check that. Check your heart, check your mind, and your relationships. Are you stonewalling those relationships? Are you avoiding meaningful conversation? Are you avoiding conversation at all? And if you are, you may be stonewalling, and you have to know that. And the reason is, if we're critical, if we find ourselves being defensive, if we find ourselves stonewalling, that leads to the 4th horseman, and I think the most damaging one personally. It's called being contempt, or having contempt. And having contempt means I'm thinking ill of you when you're not around, when you're not even present. But I'm not thinking positive. I'm not thinking, I'm thinking negative. That contempt builds up, and that is what destroys the relationship. The walls are built, so I'm making my own story up about you.
Yeah, and it's happened over a length of time. Contempt doesn't immediately happen.
Correct. Yep.
So you've been feeling criticized or feeling defensive in a situation. You've had to kind of stonewall to kind of protect yourself a little bit over that. And so then you're at a place where this has been going on for a while. So contempt doesn't happen overnight. It's a buildup.
Yeah, it really is. And so here's the deal. Just kind of do a little self-check and ask yourself, am I being critical? Am I being defensive? Am I building walls? Am I stonewalling? And am I really experiencing contempt for the other person? Those are some just really simple, quick checks you can do as you go about your day, as you begin thinking about interacting and engaging in the relationships in your life. And I think It all begins with us. It all begins with self-reconciliation, and that's what self-reconciliation looks like. Giving yourself a check on reconciling these feelings about someone else. First, we always like to look to the other person and say they need to, they should have. But really what we're talking about today is self-reconciliation. What are you doing to help you to reconcile so that you can be the healthy part of a relationship?
So you're being aware, so you're not staying in these zones, so you're doing something about it. And you may have to do some internal talk. You may have to realign an expectation that you have for another person. You may expect them to respond to you in such a manner that you need, that you want, that is good for you and who you are and your personality. But you may have to realign and realize that this person is different and they respond differently. So how do I consistently create an awareness so that I can allow myself to stay in a space, part of a count, so to speak. I'm staying in the positive of, I'm going to get my mind in the right place. I'm going to set my expectations differently. I may step up and communicate some things that I don't normally do, but I'm going to take some action so that I am choosing and I'm putting myself in a constant state of making sure I'm reconciled, like that bank account.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We'll talk about it and call it a self, reconciliation checking account, if you will, or whatever. And it really means asking that question, am I depositing more positivity into this relationship account than I am being negative? And I'll take that a step further. Before you can really do that, you've got to check yourself in your own bank account. Am I myself willing to be positive? Am I willing to engage in this? The problem we have with that, I've heard it so many times through the years, is people say, I don't feel that. I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel positive. I don't feel like putting positivity into the bank account. I feel anger. I feel, frustration. I feel whatever. And here's my deal. Putting positivity into the bank account, putting positive behaviors, positive thoughts in your own mind, those are choices. And I need you to understand, if you're in a relationship and you're saying, and you want to reconcile and you want to work on self-reconciliation, you cannot allow your emotions to drive your behavior. Because emotions are, they're not right or wrong, but they can be rational or irrational. We don't know. And so to allow that to drive your behavior makes you irrational, possibly. So it's important to say, I will not allow my emotions to drive how I respond to this person. Instead, I'm going to choose to deposit positivity. I'm going to choose to work on myself and think about things that are good, right, and pure. I'm going to think about those things that are good. I'm going to choose to do the things to create self-reconciliation, even if I don't want to. It doesn't matter really what you want. Wants come and go. I want to be, quite frankly, I want to be at the beach right now, sitting with a good book and in a beverage and watching the waves come in. That's what I want to do, right? That's not what I'm doing. Of course, I would love being here with you guys. Don't get that wrong. But I'm saying, when we allow our wants to drive our behavior, we become irrational very quickly. It's about saying, I'm choosing to put deposits in this account, and I'm going to do it whether I feel like it or not. And that may be the key to this whole thing is making those choices to put positivity, to put positive deposits in, regardless of how we feel.
We can learn from others too. We can make sure that as we watch other people, we learn how those positive deposits, the impact they make in the relationship, as well as the negative ones, when we're kind of deducting from that relationship. So, we get a chance to really to look and kind of tune in and be aware, be conscious of the impact that creates in a relationship. And then we get to choose, as you're saying, how we kind of allow that relationship, what we allow it to become and what we want it to become. So we get a chance, we can be teaching our kids, helping our kids, teaching each other, learning from each other, helping each other. If we stay in that mode where we're open and we can allow ourselves to experience these relationships and truly learn from them.
I think so, and it's on an everyday basis, and we're going to blow it, and we're going to do things we unintentionally to hurt, our spouse or even our children. But it's about so it's not about getting it right all the time.
Right.
It's about continuing to work on it.
That's right.
Continuing to grow.
So Larry, I have something I need to talk to you about.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Is it joke time?
It's almost that, my favorite time of the podcast. I want to say this though. Look, guys, we all struggle with a relationship. We all struggle with our children. We all struggle with parenting. We all struggle with saying things that are misunderstood and taken the wrong way. It happens just so often, and certainly in my world. So let's just choose to continue to keep working together. Let's choose to say, you know what, I blew that, and we'll get up and try again. But here's your question. How's your bank account? How's it looking? Are there more positive deposits being put into that bank account with your children?
A relationship bank account.
That's a relationship bank account. Or are you finding yourself being critical or defensive or stonewalling or contempt? And when you get to that contempt, by the way, the bank account's empty. It's pretty low. So let's keep our eye on that. Let's keep it full. Let's keep it going. And I know I need to be mindful of watching that bank account, making sure I'm choosing to put deposits in on a regular basis, because we're all busy. We're all running. We all have a lot of things going on, a lot of people pulling on us. So we've got to pay attention to our bank account relationally if we're going to be successful. All right, now it's time for our joke of the day, my favorite part of the podcast. You ready?
It's the part where I get so nervous.
Yeah. It's okay. It's all good. This is football season. I thought we'd go with a football joke. How about that?
Good idea.
All right, good. Why did the football coach ask for 25 cents? Yeah, he wanted a quarterback. I love it. Got to have a little fun. May all of your teams win who are listening. Thank you for listening to us. Thanks for being a part of our podcast. Thank you for crossing the line in order to make a difference in the lives of those you love, live with, and lead. We'll see you next time.